Don Revie transformed Leeds United from an average team to one of the best teams in England during his 13 years in charge of the club. By the time he left, amongst his honours were 2 First Division titles, a League Cup and 2 European Fairs Cups. And he perhaps could have won even more, with a number of second place finishes in the First Division and multiple cup finals. Revie had won the FA Cup as a player, but as a manager he had struggled to take it home for Leeds. He lost the 1965 final to Liverpool and the 1970 final to Chelsea. In 1972, Leeds were in the final against Arsenal, who had won the FA Cup the year before. It was a chance for Don Revie and Leeds to bring home the only domestic trophy they had failed to capture. This is a story of Leeds vs Arsenal, the 1972 FA Cup final. Don Revie was appointed as player-manager of Leeds United in 1961. At the time, they were struggling in the second division of English football, and Leeds was a city more catered towards its rugby league side. Revie focused on transforming the fortunes of the club through his idiosyncratic methods. One of his key ideologies was to make Leeds a family, with Revie serving as the father. He took an interest in the lives of his players off the pitch, as well as the non-playing staff too. He would prepare a dossier on his opponents before each game, something that was much harder to do back then than it was for Marcelo Bielsa today. Whilst his spell did not begin with a bang, he began to form the squad that would serve him for many years. Defender Jack Charlton and midfielder Billy Bremner were key staples of the side, and Revie's focus on youth saw the likes of Eddie Gray, Norman Hunter, Peter Lorimer and Paul Reaney come through, all players who had served Leeds for many years. He had a backroom staff group of Les Cocker, Maurice Lindley and Sid Owen, a group who would also serve him in the long run. Revie's Leeds achieved promotion to the top flight by winning the second division in 1963-1964. Leeds did, however, develop a reputation as an overly physical side that would leave them brandished with the nickname Dirty Leeds throughout Revie's time in charge. Leeds performed brilliantly in their first season back in the First Division, but sadly came out with nothing to show for it. They finished second in the top flight, losing out to bitter rivals Manchester United. They would have another chance to land their first major honour, however, having reached the FA Cup final. Leeds faced Bill Shankly's Liverpool in the 1965 FA Cup final. It was a perfect match, with both sides having been taken over by managers in the second division whose methods had completely transformed their fortunes, and neither side had won the famous cup before. The game was a tight affair, with neither side able to break the deadlock in normal time, but only 3 minutes into extra time, Roger Hunt headed in to give Liverpool the lead. Only 8 minutes later, Billy Bremner fired the ball into the net to level the scores. With neither side wishing for a replay, all the game needed was one moment to settle where the trophy was heading, but unfortunately for Revie, that moment was to come from a man in red. Ian St John headed the ball into the net 3 minutes from time to put Liverpool back in front. It was to be Shankly that would lift the famous cup, whilst Leeds would have to lick their wounds and try again for their first major honour. With no new signings, Leeds went into the next season keen to make amends, but they again would miss out. They finished second in the league and were knocked out of the semi-finals of the Fairs Cup by Real Zaragoza. Leeds would go one better and reach the final the following season, but would lose 2-0 on aggregate to Dynamo Zagreb. They were also knocked out of the FA Cup in the semi-final by Chelsea. Leeds seemed to be cursed. No matter what they did, they couldn't lift a trophy, and Revie decided that action was needed. A superstitious man, Revie hired a gypsy to lift a curse he felt had been placed on the Ellen Road turf. Shortly after, he signed striker Mick Jones from Sheffield United for £100,000. Whether Revie's superstitions were unfounded or not, their fortunes changed. Leeds won their first major honour in 1968, with the Terry Cooper goal ensuring that Leeds defeated Arsenal 1-0 in the League Cup final. But things didn't stop there. Having finally got the weight of the first trophy off their shoulders, Leeds would be third time lucky in the Fairs Cup, and defeated Hungarian side Ferencváros 1-0 on aggregate, thanks to a goal from Mick Jones in the first leg. The next season, Revie would continue the good fortunes of Leeds, winning the 1968-1969 First Division in phenomenal style. They did so by setting 3 new records, with the most wins, most points and fewest losses. Leeds had truly proven themselves amongst the elite, and Revie was keen to continue adding to his cabinet. With Leeds qualifying for the European Cup as league winners, Revie targeted a treble. but the good fortunes that had met Leeds seemed to have suddenly hit a wall. They finished second in the league and lost in the semi-finals of the European Cup. They were able to reach their second FA Cup final, where they faced Chelsea. Leeds went ahead through Jack Charlton, but Chelsea equalised before half-time through Peter Houseman. Mick Jones put Leeds back in front with 6 minutes to go, but Chelsea only 2 minutes later levelled it again through Ian Hutchinson. The deadlock would not be broken in extra time, and a replay would be staged at Old Trafford weeks later. Mick Jones scored again in the first half, but 12 minutes from time, Peter Osgood levelled, and David Webb would score in extra time to win the cup for Chelsea. It was a disaster for Leeds. They had come so close, yet had nothing to show for it. They emerged from the final with their reputation worsened due to the violence on show, which did nothing to dispel their Dirty Leeds tag. Leeds kept the same squad and went again the next season, but they were still unable to exercise their FA Cup demons, with a shock defeat to lower league side Colchester, knocking them out of the tournament. Arsenal would take the First Division home as part of a famous double, but there was still a shot at glory for Leeds. They had reached the Fairs Cup final again and would face Juventus. Goals from Peter Madeley and Mick Bates saw Leeds fly home from Turin with 2 away goals in a 2-2 draw. An early Clark header was enough to see Leeds to victory, despite a leveller from Juventus, and they won the final on away goals. Leeds had made some amends for their near miss, but the most famous trophy in English football still eluded them. Leeds impressed in the league, playing attractive football to counterbalance their reputation, and even won 7-0 against Southampton. Unfortunately, they were unable to claim a second league title. Leeds went to Wolves on the final day, with a draw being enough to win them the league, but they would lose, and the title would go to Revie's arch-nemesis, Brian Clough, whose Derby side won the title by a single point. Having been knocked out of the League Cup and Fairs Cup, the FA Cup was a vital chance for success. Leeds faced Bristol Rovers in the third round, and any fears of an upset like the season before were soon put to bed, thanks to respective braces from Johnny Giles and Peter Lorimer. A trip to Anfield to face Shankly's Liverpool ended in a 0-0 draw, but 2 goals from Alan Clark in the replay sent Leeds through. Another brace from Johnny Giles away to Cardiff saw Leeds emerge as 2-0 winners. Goals from Alan Clark and Jack Charlton took Leeds beyond Spurs in the quarter-finals, and 2 goals from Mick Jones and 1 from Peter Lorimer saw Leeds defeat Birmingham to reach their 3rd FA Cup final. Having come agonisingly close twice before, the Leeds faithful prayed that they would be 3rd time lucky and finally take the famous trophy to Ellen Road for the first time. With a crammed fixture schedule, the cup final would be sandwiched amongst their last league fixtures, and so it was not to be an easy task. They would be up against Arsenal, who had defeated Bill Shankly's Liverpool in the final the year before. It was to be the centenary year of the FA Cup, with a parade to celebrate 100 years of the tournament taking place before kick-off. Leeds released a single simply called Leeds United in anticipation for the final, but the B-side of the single, Marching On Together, would become a hit for the fans and is still sung at Ellen Road to this day. Leeds' fixture congestion was making them weary, and Johnny Giles, Alan Clark, Eddie Gray, Paul Madeley and Paul Reaney all went into the game carrying some form of injury that they had to play through. Arsenal kicked off the game, and only 48 seconds in, Gunners left-back Bob McNabb was booked for a tackle on Peter Lorimer. Arsenal were prepared to fight fire with fire. Leeds had a great chance denied when Eddie Gray was violently brought down, and this took the game to 5 free kicks within the first 4 minutes. Chances continued to fall for both sides, and a battle within the wall was forming between John Radford and Norman Hunter. As the game went on, it was Leeds who was starting to get the better chances, but they couldn't take advantage of them. Alan Clark hit the crossbar moments before half-time, and Bremner went into the book for arguing with the referee. The teams went in at half-time level at 0-0. Revie rushed to the dressing room, keen to ensure that his side took advantage of the momentum that they currently had, and not let it go to waste. The second half continued the same way. Whilst Arsenal nearly pounced on a drop ball by David Harvey, and Bob McNabb headed just wide, Leeds were still on top, but if they kept missing chances, it would surely come back to haunt them. In the 53rd minute, Leeds burst forward through Peter Lorimer. He spread the ball wide to Mick Jones on the right-hand side. Jones ran with the ball, and was able to evade a challenge from Bob McNabb. With McNabb about to pounce again, Jones whipped the ball towards the edge of the box. As the ball floated high in the air across the penalty spot, Alan Clark rose. He dived towards the ball and met it with his head. It flew towards the goal and evaded Arsenal keeper Jeff Barnett before finding the bottom corner. Leeds were ahead. Alan Clark had scored his 4th goal in the FA Cup that season, and the destiny of Leeds was now in their own hands. They had finally made a chance count, and they now had to make sure that they held on to their advantage. The tensions in the game will continue, with Alan Ball receiving a stern talking to from the referee for lashing out on Billy Bremner. After snuffing out a counter-attack, Leeds passed the ball around to a chorus of olays from their supporters. It was a tactic that had become a trademark of Leeds that season, and proved that they weren't just a dirty side. Charlie George fired the ball against the crossbar in the 69th minute, as the Gunners were keen to prove that they weren't beaten yet. Leeds responded in kind, with a solo effort from Eddie Gray being tipped over the bar by Barnett. The game ticked on, with only 1 goal between the teams. Arsenal continued to grow frustrated, with Leeds able to break up their attacks. Leeds countered with a long ball from Norman Hunter finding Mick Jones. Jones went past Frank McClintock before Barnett bounced on the ball to deny the goal. Jones fell on the floor in the collision and stayed down, with it later emerging that he had dislocated his elbow. Whilst Jones stayed on the floor, Arsenal desperately searched for an equaliser. With the crowd whistling for full time, Arsenal tried to break forward. Peter Simpson had the ball just inside the Leeds half and attempted to play the ball into the Leeds box, but 37-year-old Jack Charlton headed away the threat, and seconds later the whistle blew for full time. Leeds had finally done it. At the 3rd time of asking, they had finally captured the FA Cup. Leeds climbed the steps, with the injured Mick Jones helped up the steps by Norman Hunter. Billy Bremner lifted the trophy high as the Leeds fans cheered. After the game, Don Revie stated, "I have waited and sweated a lot of years for today, but it has all been worth it. This is the 2nd happiest day of my life. The first was when we beat Liverpool to win the championship. It was the peak for Leeds, the cherry on top of the honours they had captured after so many years of mediocrity." Leeds would reach the final again the next season, but amazingly lost to 2nd Division Sunderland. They would finally get their 2nd league title in 1974, shortly before Revie ended his tenure at Leeds to take the England job. Leeds would face a long time in the wilderness, but captured their 3rd league title under Howard Wilkinson in 1992. Whilst there were many great things Revie did for Leeds, this final was perhaps his finest hour. Winning what was at the time the biggest trophy in English football, after coming agonisingly close before, was perhaps the peak of the incredible transformation that he helped Leeds experience. Although Leeds could so easily have achieved more under Revie, he was able to make them experience incredible moments such as this, and Alan Clark's header to win Leeds their first, and to date only, FA Cup is perhaps the greatest moment in the club's history.